Hello friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Hot Fuzz in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Hot Fuzz. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Hot Fuzz film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining, so you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So, let's start the video. Hot Fuzz is a 2007 buddy cop action comedy film directed by Edgar Wright, who co-wrote the film with Simon Pegg. Pegg stars as Nicholas Angel, an elite London police officer whose proficiency makes the rest of his team look bad, causing him to be reassigned to a West Country village where a series of gruesome deaths take place. Nick Frost stars alongside him as police constable Danny Butterman, Angel's partner. Hot Fuzz is the second and most commercially successful film in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, succeeding Shaun of the Dead and followed by The World's End. Over 100 action films were used as inspiration for the script. Principal photography took place in Wells, Somerset, for 11 weeks, and 10 artists worked on VFX, which involved explosions, gory gunfire scenes, and a flip book. Released on the 16th of February 2007 in the United Kingdom and 20th of April in the United States, Hot Fuzz received acclaim from critics and grossed $80 million worldwide on a budget of $12 to $16 million. In 2020, Empire named it the 67th greatest film of the 21st century. Plot: Nicholas Angel, a recently promoted Metropolitan Police Sergeant, is reassigned to the rural town of Sandford, Gloucestershire, for being too exceptional. Angel arrests Danny Butterman for drunk driving, but later discovers that he is the son of Inspector Frank Butterman and a police officer himself. Angel is frustrated by the village's mundanity, his and Frank's incompetent colleagues, and the Neighborhood Watch Alliance, NWA's prioritization of low crime statistics over law enforcement. Angel and Danny stop the two lead actors of a local production of Romeo and Juliet for speeding. A cloaked figure later murders the actors, and their deaths are staged as a car crash. Only Angel suspects foul play. Angel and Danny discover an illegal weapons stash, including an old sea mine, and confiscate it. Angel warms to Danny, and together they binge-watch action films at Danny's house. That night, a cloaked figure attacks wealthy land developer George Merchant in his home and kills him in a gas explosion. Angel suspects that the deaths are connected to a recent property deal. Tim Messenger, a local journalist, approaches Angel at the village fete, claiming to have information. However, a cloaked figure kills Messenger by dislodging masonry from the church's tower. Angel learns from Leslie Tiller, the village florist, about her plans to sell her land to Merchant's business partners. While Angel is retrieving his notebook, a cloaked figure murders Tiller with her garden shears and escapes. Angel suspects supermarket manager Simon Skinner, as the property deal would have built a rival supermarket, but Skinner has an alibi. After surmising that there are multiple killers, Angel is attacked in his hotel room by Michael Lurch Armstrong, an employee of Skinner. He incapacitates Lurch and learns about a secret NWA meeting at Sandford Castle. The NWA, led by Frank, reveals that they committed the murders and staged them as accidents because each victim threatened Sandford's chances of winning Village of the Year. Irene, Frank's late wife and Danny's mother, put everything into helping Sandford win the first ever competition, but travelers moved in and ruined their chances the night before the adjudicators arrived, driving her to suicide. Frank has since vowed to help Sandford win Village of the Year every year, whatever the cost. Angel flees, but stumbles into the castle's catacombs, discovering the corpses of the NWA's victims, some of whom Angel had helped arrest or question, including his predecessor, Sergeant Popwell. Danny suddenly appears and feigns murdering Angel. While pretending to dispose of him, Danny urges Angel to return to London for his own safety. Although initially leaving for London, Angel stops at a convenience store and takes heart after seeing a display of action movie DVDs, returns to Sanford. After visiting the police station and arming himself with the confiscated guns, Angel engages in a shootout with the NWA, with Danny joining Angel during the battle. When Frank orders the other officers to arrest them, the pair successfully convinces them of Frank's complicity. Frank flees, and the officers besiege the supermarket, with Skinner escaping in a police car with Frank. After Angel and Danny engage the offenders in a high-speed chase and shootout, Angel corners Skinner at Sanford's model village. After a fight, Skinner is impaled on a miniature church steeple. Frank attempts to escape in Angel's car, but a swan that the pair had recaptured earlier attacks him. Angel's former superiors ask him to return to London as the crime rate has risen heavily in his absence, but Angel declines and elects to remain in Sanford. While the officers are reviewing the paperwork of the many arrests, Tom Weaver, the last NWA member, enters the station wielding a blunderbuss. He shoots at Angel, but Danny takes the hit. In the resulting struggle, Weaver accidentally activates the sea mine, killing himself and destroying the station. 1 year later, Angel has been promoted to inspector, and Danny, having survived, has been promoted to sergeant. After visiting Irene's grave, the two drive to their next crime scene. Cast Paddy Considine as Detective Sergeant Andy Wainwright, Sanford Police. Timothy Dalton as Simon Skinner, the manager of the supermarket at Sanford. Bill Nighy as Police Chief Inspector Kenneth from the Metropolitan Police in London. Billy Whitelaw as Joyce Cooper, who runs the hotel where Nicholas stays. Edward Woodward as Tom Weaver, a professor who represents the Neighborhood Watch Alliance and looks over the town with a number of surveillance cameras. Bill Bailey as Sergeants Turner, both twin brother desk sergeants at Sanford. David Bradley as Arthur Webley, a farmer at Sanford who has an impenetrable accent and a huge stockpile of weapons, including a sea mine. Adam Buxton as Tim Messenger, journalist at the Sanford Citizen. Olivia Coleman as PC Doris Thatcher, the sole female police officer in Sanford. Ron Cook as George Merchant, a land developer who has a large mansion at Sanford. Kenneth Cranham as James Reaper, a farmer at Sanford. Peter White as Roy Porter, Mary's husband, landlord of Sanford's pub, The Crown. Julia Deacon as Mary Porter, Roy's wife, landlady of Sanford's pub, The Crown. Kevin Eldon as Sergeant Tony Fisher, Sanford Police. Martin Freeman as Sergeant from the Metropolitan Police in London production. Development. Director Edgar Wright wanted to write and direct a cop film because there isn't really any tradition of cop films in the UK. We felt that every other country in the world had its own tradition of great cop action films, and we had none. Wright and Pegg spent 18 months writing the script. The first draft took 8 months to develop. And after watching 138 cop-related films for dialogue and plot ideas and conducting over 50 interviews with police officers for research, the script was completed after another 9 months. The title was based on the various two-word titles of action films in the 1980s and 1990s. In one interview, Wright declared that he wanted to make a title that really had very little meaning, like Lethal Weapon and Point Break and Executive Decision. In the same interview, Pegg joked that many action films' titles seem to be generated from two hats filled with adjectives and nouns, and you just, okay, that'll do. While writing the script, Wright, as well as Pegg, intended to include Frost as the partner for Pegg's character. Frost revealed that he would do the film only if he could name his character, and he chose Danny Butterman. Preparation and filming. During the latter half of 2005, working title films approached several towns in southwest England looking for an appropriate filming location. Pegg commented, "We're both from the West Country, so it just seemed like it was the perfect and logical thing to drag those kind of ideas and those genres and those cliches back to our beginnings, to where we grew up. so you could see high-octane balls-to-the-wall action in Frome. Stow-on-the-Wold was considered amongst others, but after being turned away, the company settled upon Wells in Somerset, Wright's hometown, of which he has said, "I love it, but I also want to trash it." Wells Cathedral was digitally painted out of every shot of the cathedral city, as Wright wanted the Church of St. Cuthbert to be the center building for the fictional town of Sandford. However, the bishop's palace is identifiable in some shots, and was itself used as the setting for some scenes. While shooting scenes in their uniforms, Pegg and Frost were often mistaken for genuine police officers and asked for directions by passers-by. Filming also took place at the Hendon Police College, including the driving school skid pan and athletic track, and at the Metropolitan Police Specialist Training Center at Gravesend. Next to Hendon is Mill Hill, where Finchley Nurseries is located, which is where the flower shop scene was filmed. The final scenes were filmed at the surviving ruins of Waverley Abbey. Filming commenced on the 19th of March 2006 and lasted for 11 weeks. After editing, Wright ended up cutting half an hour of footage from the film. Outside references. Self-references. Wright has said that Hot Fuzz takes elements from his final amateur film, Dead Right, which he described as both Lethal Weapon set in Somerset and a Dirty Harry film in Somerset. He uses some of the same locations in both films, including the Summerfield supermarket, where he used to work as a shelf stacker. References to Shaun of the Dead are also present in the film. In one scene, Nicholas wants to chase a shoplifter by jumping over several garden fences. However, Danny is reluctant. Nicholas says, "What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?" He smiles assuredly before jumping over 4 in a row. According to the DVD commentary, Pegg vaulted over 3 fences, and a stuntman did a backflip over the 4th. When Danny attempts it, he trips and falls through the first fence and climbs over the second. This is almost identical to a scene in Shaun of the Dead, including the fall-through fence gag, albeit with the pratfalling role reverse. In Shaun of the Dead, it happens to Pegg's character rather than Frost's, and he falls over the fence rather than through it. The DVD commentary says that Frost purposely looked back at the camera after crashing through the fence to show that he had done the stunt rather than someone else. Frost's characters, Danny in Hot Fuzz, Ed in Shaun of the Dead, have a liking for Cornetto ice cream. Pegg and Wright have referred to Hot Fuzz as being the second film in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, with Shaun of the Dead being the first and The World's End being the third. Other films, various scenes in Hot Fuzz feature a variety of action film DVDs, such as Police Story 3, Super Cop, and scenes from Point Break and Bad Boys 2. Wright revealed that he had to get permission from every actor in each video clip, including stuntmen, to use the clips, and for the use of the DVD covers had to pay for the rights from the respective studios. The film parodies cliches used in other action movies. On the topic of perceived gun fetishes in these movies, Pegg has said, "Men can't do that thing, which is the greatest achievement of humankind, which is to make another human, so we make metal versions of our own penises and fire more bits of metal out of the end into people's heads. It's our turn to grab the gun by the hilt and fire it into your face." Despite this, Pegg maintains that the film is not a spoof, in that they lack the sneer that a lot of parodies have that look down on their source material, because we're looking up to it. The film also includes various references to The Wicker Man, in which Edward Woodward had played a policeman tough on law and order. Pop culture. In 2020, Wright indicated on social media that the title of the film was an apparent reference to the 2004 debut studio album Hot Fuss by The Killers. However, he has also said that the title of the film means nothing. Special effects. To illustrate the destruction of the mansion as a result of the gas explosion, gas mortars were placed in front of the building to create large-scale fireballs. The wave of fire engulfs the camera, and to achieve that effect, gas mortars were used again but were fired upwards into a black ceiling piece that sloped up towards the camera. When the sequence was shot at a high speed, the flames appeared to surge across the ground. For one of the final scenes of the film, the Sanford police station is destroyed by an explosion. Part of the explosion was created by using a set model that showed its windows being blown out while the building remained intact. The actual destruction of the building was depicted by exploding a miniature model of the station. Similar to the work in Shaun of the Dead, blood and gore was prevalent throughout the film. Visual effects supervisor Richard Briscoe revealed the rationale for using the large amounts of blood. In many ways, the more extreme you make it, the more people know it is stylized and enjoy the humor inherent in how ridiculous it is. It's rather like the eventually limbless Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The most time-consuming gore sequence involved a character's head being crushed by a section of a church. A dummy was used against a green screen, and the head was detonated at the point when the object was about to impact the body. Throughout the film, over 70 gunfight shots were digitally augmented. Briscoe's rationale for adding the additional effects was that the town square shootout, for example, is full of extra little hits scattered throughout, so that it feels like our hero characters really do have it all going off, all around them. It was a great demonstration of how seemingly very trivial enhancements can make a difference when combined across a sequence. Promotion. The first 2 teaser trailers were released on the 16th of October 2006. Wright, Pegg, and Frost maintained several video blogs, which were released at various times throughout the production of the film. Wright and Frost held a panel at the 2006 San Diego Comic-Con to promote Hot Fuzz, which included preliminary footage and a question and answer session. The two returned to the convention again in 2007 to promote the US DVD release. Advanced screenings of the film took place on the 14th of February 2007 in the UK, and the world premiere was on the 16th of February 2007. The premiere included escorts from motorcycle police officers and the use of blue carpet instead of the traditional red carpet. Release. Critical reception. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported a 91% approval rating with an average rating of 7.74 based on 204 reviews. The website's consensus reads, "The brilliant minds behind Shaun of the Dead successfully take a shot at the buddy cop genre with Hot Fuzz. The result is a bitingly satiric and hugely entertaining parody." It has a Metacritic score of 81 out of 100, based on 37 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Ollie Richards of Empire praised the chemistry between Pegg and Frost, saying, "After almost a decade together, they're clearly so comfortable in each other's presence that they feel no need to fight for the punchline, making them terrific company for 2 hours." Philip French of The Observer, who did not care for Shaun of the Dead, warmed to the comedy team in this film. The film also received positive reviews in the United States. Derek Ellie of Variety praised Broadbent and Dalton as especially good as Angel's hail fellow well-met superior and oily number 1 suspect. As an homage to the genre, the film was well received by screenwriter Shane Black. Despite being mostly praised, not all reviews were positive. The Daily Mirror gave Hot Fuzz only 2/5, stating that many of the jokes miss their target as the film becomes more action-based. Anthony Quinn of The Independent said, "The same impish spirit as in Spaced is uncorked here, but it has been fatally indulged." In 2016, Empire magazine ranked Hot Fuzz 50th on their list of the 100 best British films, with their entry stating, "The second in their planned trilogy again nails the genre cliches, with everything from Point Break to Bad Boys 2, both openly referenced, humorously homaged." Pegg's natural chemistry with longtime real-life pal Frost remains endearing as ever. Elsewhere, the Scooby-Doo meets Scream mystery is peppered with Britain's finest talent, playing up the English small-town cliches to great effect in a brilliantly incongruous meeting of sleepy rural life and stabby, violent action. In 2025, it was one of the films voted for the Reader's Choice edition of the New York Times list of the 100 best movies of the 21st century, finishing at number 108. Box office. The film generated £7.1 million in its first weekend of release in the United Kingdom on the 14th of February 2007. In 20th of April US opening weekend, the film grossed $5.8 million from only 825 cinemas, making it the highest per-cinema average of any film in the top 10 that week. Its opening weekend take beat the $3.3 million opening weekend gross of Pegg and Wright's previous film, Shaun of the Dead. In its second weekend of release, Rogue Pictures expanded the film's cinema count from 825 to 1,272, and it grossed $4.9 million, representing a 17% dip in the gross. Altogether, Hot Fuzz grossed $80,574 worldwide. In 9 weeks, the film earned nearly twice what Shaun of the Dead made in the US, and more than 3 times its gross in other countries. Home media. The DVD was released on the 11th of June 2007 in the UK. Over 1 million DVDs were sold in the UK in the first 4 weeks of its release. The 2-disc set contains the feature film with commentaries, outtakes, storyboards, deleted scenes, a making-of documentary, video blogs, featurettes, galleries, and some hidden Easter eggs. The DVD also features Wright's last amateur film, Dead Right, which he described as Hot Fuzz without the budget. The film appeared on Region 2 DVD earlier than the theatrical release date in Germany, which was on the 14th of June 2007. In the commentary with director Wright and fellow filmmaker Quentin Tarantino, they discuss nearly 200 films. The US DVD and HD DVD release was on the 31st of July 2007. It opened at number 2 at the American DVD sales chart, selling 853,000 units for over $14 million in revenue. 1,923 units have been sold, acquiring revenue of $33.3 million. The HD DVD edition has more special features than the standard DVD release. A 3-disc collector's edition was released on the 27th of November 2007 and a Blu-ray edition on the 22nd of September 2009. Soundtrack. Main article Hot Fuzz. The soundtrack album, Hot Fuzz, music from the motion picture, was released on the 19th of February 2007 in the United Kingdom and on the 17th of April 2007 in the United States and Canada. The UK release contains 22 tracks, and the North American release has 14. The film's score is by British composer David Arnold, who scored the James Bond film series from 1997 to 2008. The soundtrack album's Hot Fuzz Suite is a compilation of excerpts from Arnold's score. According to the DVD commentary, the scenes where Nicholas Angel is at a convenience store while leaving Sanford and is returned to the police station while arming for the final shootout, found in the track Avenging Angel, were scored by Robert Rodriguez, who did not see the rest of the film while writing the music. Other music from the film is a mix of 1960s and 1970s British rock, the Kinks, T-Rex, The Move, Sweet, The Trogs, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Cozy Powell, Dire Straits, New Wave, Adam Ant, XTC, and a Glaswegian indie band, The Fratellis. The soundtrack album features dialogue extracts by Pegg, Frost, and other cast members, mostly embedded in the music track. The song selection also includes some police-themed titles, including Supergrass, Caught by the Fuzz, as well as Here Come the Fuzz, which was specially composed for the film by John Spencer's Blues Explosion. Hot Fuzz Review. There's such euphoria surrounding our film industry right now that I'd be tempted to compare it with the heady days of Britpop, were it not for the chill of imminent catastrophe and shame that this word conjures up. At the London Critics Awards last week, I made an earnest speech about this success, and for a heady few seconds, body surfed on a wave of feel-good whooping from the audience, before I ruined it all with a spectacularly misjudged witticism about Dirty Sanchez, the movie not winning anything. A joke received in the same kind of sudden, clock-ticking quiet that parties of grand ladies and gentlemen in 1901 must have greeted the announcement of Queen Victoria's death. The Brit film bonanza, in its current form, arguably stems from the optimism sparked in 2004 by Shaun of the Dead, the zombie spoof from the creators of the cult TV show Spaced. Between them, director Edgar Wright and co-authors and stars Simon Pegg and Nick Frost cheered us all up after a depressing welter of Mockney gangsters and persuaded us, as it were, to remove our collective big toe from the shotgun trigger. Their stock price has shot up since then, and this new film, disconcertingly, seems to have a top telly star in almost every minor role. Hot Fuzz tackles a new movie genre, actually, and crucially, 2 movie genres, and mixes in plenty of gags. This is the world of crime and cops. Some may feel that there was more mileage and dramatic ingenuity in Zombies, but for me, the Wright, Pegg, Frost team make up for this with plenty of irrepressible fun, an interestingly sophisticated sense of the fictional differences between British and American crime, and big, regular laughs. Pegg plays Sergeant Nicholas Angel, a fiercely motivated and successful London copper who finds himself transferred to the sleepy Gloucestershire town of Sandford. Here, the urban tough guy finds himself all adrift among the country mice, particularly his new partner, PC Danny Butterman, a fantastically overweight and lenient Bobby played by Nick Frost, who is saucer-eyed with excitement about the macho world of London law enforcement. He wants to know if Angel has ever fired a gun while jumping sideways through the air, or if it's true that if you shoot at a special spot in the brain, it will make the head spectacularly explode. Almost everyone in this manicured little community seems to know and love each other, from the sinister supermarket mogul, Timothy Dalton, to the epicene solicitor, David Threlfall, to the local Inspector Butterman, poor Danny's dad, played by Jim Broadbent. The coppers themselves are cheerfully useless, and law enforcement is entirely subcontracted to the Neighborhood Watch Association, a group repeatedly referred to by its very unfortunate initials. Everyone is preoccupied with the best-kept village competition to the point of manic obsession. We are crucially to learn that failure one year caused one local woman to become so depressed she drove her Datsun Cherry into a ravine. Does this community share a creepy little secret that Sergeant Angel doesn't yet realize? Danny and Nicholas, as their friendship deepens, share a woman-free relationship that is tragically homoerotic in the tradition of movies that Danny loves, such as Point Break and Bad Boys 2. Exquisitely, it is the distinctively crasser sequel that Danny specifies. He has a vast DVD library of these films and passionately yearns for the muscular simplicity of American cops with their lock-and-load approach to taking down the bad guys. The irony is that he is the unwitting prisoner of quite another kind of crime genre. Without knowing it, poor Danny is living inside an English Gothic celluloid nightmare, like Straw Dogs or The Wicker Man. Edward Woodward, the baffled policeman in this latter film, plays the neighborhood watch enforcer here. Where the American movies show a heavily tooled-up and male combination of might and right triumphing over evil, these British films satirically and pessimistically show evil eroding the valiant forces of good. There is no community in pictures such as Lethal Weapon or Die Hard, however malign, other than the community of cops in the station house. But the community is what encircles and embattles the police in the creepy English template. So Danny and Nicholas finally bring the wholesomely unreflective American armed response to the English village green to blast away its petty xenophobic conspiracies. There are plenty of film references. Perhaps most arcane is Inspector Butterman superciliously calling the underage drinkers the younglings, surely in homage to George Lucas's Revenge of the Sith. There are funny moments all the way through, particularly among the abysmal Sandford coppers, such as Bill Bailey's morose custody sergeant who does nothing but read Ian Banks novels. Hot Fuzz is overlong and ends about 3 times, a reference to Return of the King, and despite the film buffery, it owes a lot to Brit TV shows ranging from The Vicar of Dibley to Life on Mars. There were, moreover, moments when I suspected Pegg and Frost were fancying themselves as action stars for real. But the gags keep coming, and the pair really do have a great comedy double act. Pegg's face is intensely, frantically, preemptively aware of the embarrassments and ironies of every situation. Frost is naively placid, genial, and open, prone to self-humiliation every time he opens his mouth. There he gets partnered with PC Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, a genial and laid-back slob whose dad, Frank Jim Broadbent, heads the local police. A massive fan of American carrot action movies like he a Point Breaker and a Bad Boy 2. Danny is all giddy with puppyish excitement about Angel's big city experience. Did he ever fire a gun while jumping sideways through the air? Sandford is the kind of idyllic manicured village where everybody knows everybody else, and policing consists of such unforgettable events as shooing miners out of the pub or looking for missing swans. Everyone takes a relaxed approach, and would just rather concentrate on winning the best village title for the 10th time in a row. But soon after Angel's arrival, a series of grisly deaths that everyone else assumes to be accidents finally gives him something to investigate. His chief suspect is Simon Skinner, Timothy Dalton, the owner of the local supermarket, who looks like the kind of mustache-whirling villain that cackles over his evil plans in his secret evil lair while stroking a white Persian cat. Hot Fuzz takes its sweet time developing its story, and while the first two-thirds do serve regular laughs and visual gags, as well as appearances by countless British film and TV actors, Bill Nye, Olivia Colman, and Bill Bailey, among others, it took a while for the movie to really click with me. There were a few times during midsection when I felt that the story kind of dragged, while at the same time Wright's trademark frenetic editing was getting a tad exhausting. The growing romance between uptight, no-fun Angel and easygoing Danny does a lot to sweeten the deal. Bag and Frost have such a natural and comfortable chemistry, and they're wonderful to watch together. At a certain climactic point, a Hot Fuzza takes a sharp turn into the territory that's vaguely reminiscent of Fatha Wicker Man. And after that, all hell breaks loose in an action-packed extravaganza that trots out just about every Hollywood action movie. Lee Chait the copyright. This loving skewering of American action through a distinctly British lens makes for one hell of an exciting and funny finale and elevates the movie as a whole. Though overall Hot Fuzza is not as inventive or hilarious Sauce's teen, Shaun of the Dead Bean Wright's previous effort, there's a lot to say for a strong finish to a film. I absolutely loved Hot Fuzzies. It reminded me of the quainted 3 dramas that OAPs watch, such as Heartbeat, Midsummer Murders, and Inspector Morse, but with insane action, comically over-the-top violence, and curse words aplenty thrown into the mix. The film is chock full of fantastic British actors who all give hysterically funny performances. The script is surprisingly intelligent for a film that's this hilarious, and the action sequences are both bonkers and thrilling. Hot Fuzz is more than a silly buddy comedy. It's one of the best parodies I've ever seen. Hot Fuzz is the first film directed by Edgar Wright that I've seen, and considering how much I enjoyed this one, I can't wait to watch his other movies. Wright's direction here is excellent. The film moves at a breakneck pace, meaning that there is never a dull or unentertaining moment. It explodes off the screen with an energetic personality that perfectly blends the setting of a relaxing evening drama with gloriously gory action set pieces. Calling the cast and Hot Fuzz star-studded is a massive understatement. Simon Pegg, who is one of my favorite actors, is as phenomenal as ever in the role of determined police officer Nicholas Angel. I'm sorry, Angel. Nick Frost is equally likable as Angel's partner on the Sanford Police Service, Danny Butterman, who provides many of the movie's best references and one-liners. It's staggering how many great actors are in the supporting cast and Hot Fuzz. I would like to praise them all individually, but if I did, this review would be 7,000 words long, so I'll just list some of them. Jim Broadbent, Bill Nye, Martin Freeman, Timothy Dalton, Olivia Colman, Steve Coogan, Paul Freeman, Stephen Merchant, and David Bradley all appear in this film. Wow, the casting director deserves a round of applause. But that's not all. Cate Blanchett and Peter Jackson even make cameo appearances here. From deadpan deliveries to riotous mockeries of action movie tropes, Hot Fuzz excels in every area of comedy. Not a single joke fell flat, and even if you find one gag annoying, the movie barrels along so quickly that you'll probably be laughing at the next joke almost immediately. Hot Fuzz is probably the smartest comedy I've seen in a long time. Almost every line of dialogue has an amusing and satisfying payoff later on in this film, meaning that I'll need to rewatch it quite a lot to pick up on all of the clever gags. Some action comedies pride themselves on their comedic moments, but lack note for the action sequences. Thankfully, Hot Fuzz isn't one of those films. Despite some presumably intentional shaky cam, the action in Hot Fuzz is a joy to behold. It's stylized, captivating, and very, very bloody. What makes the action here even more incredible is that most of the first two-thirds of this movie is very light on traditional action. But then the film goes completely bonkers in the third act, and becomes a non-stop adrenaline ride in which the two leads are thrown into an all-out battle with the villains. I don't want to spoil who the antagonists are, but let me just say the hilarity increases exponentially when they appear on screen. An aspect of Hot Fuzz that I very much appreciated was that this British film that actually feels like it was made by people that understand the British sense of humor and culture. Many movies set in Britain, mostly sloppy rom-coms like The Haphazard Four Weddings and a Funeral and The Ghastly, The Holiday, depict every English character as either really posh or really charming. And the only locations seen are usually either London or a village that looks like it's been torn off of a tacky postcard. However, the characters in Hot Fuzz act like real people that you could meet on the street until the third act, when any sense of realism is hurled out the window and the town of Sanford feels like a living and breathing location. In conclusion, Hot Fuzz is simply amazing. It's an ingenious lampoon of blowout action spectaculars and murder mysteries told in a side-splitting and immensely enjoyable way. I loved every single second of it and cannot wait to buy it on Blu-ray and watch it over and over and over again. At first, it was the DVD cover that fascinated me. To my 8-year-old brain, it was inconceivable that so many explosions could fit around the two policemen on the front. This film promised action, excitement, and high-octane thrills. It was a forbidden treasure on the family DVD shelf. Though I had no clue what the film was even about, I had no idea both Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were, and I had no grasp on Edgar was or what his acclaimed style of filmmaking was like. To an 8-year-old, it just looked so broken by Ross, and Do a Hot Fuzza had lodged itself into my brain, and I was desperate to watch it. A few months after that DVD materialized in the house, my older and infinitely cooler cousin came to stay. Whether it was fate or coincidence, tucked away in his overnight bag, he had brought a copy of the Hot Fuzz. Knowing that night we'd watch a film, the tension that day was overwhelming. Was I in for a night of gunfights and explosions? Who were these policemen, and why did they look so dangerous and daring? What was a Hot Fuzz? It was so tantalizingly close, and yet so far. Would my mom even let me watch it? She said yes, practically shaking with excitement. The DVD went in and the film began, and it blew my mind. Unaware that a Hot Fuzza was a homage to buddy cop movies, I thought this was an entirely new frontier of film. For the most part, a Hot Fuzza saves the action for the third act. Yet, I was engrossed throughout. Most of the humor went over my head, and this action comedy was more akin to an action horror. A Hot Fuzza places its grisly murders into a quiet rural setting, eerily similar to the village I grew up in. The hooded murderer, which stalked the cobbled streets outside the local Summerfield, was a fear far too close for home. The film was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. And the razor-sharp script went over my head as I was too busy peeking at the film between my fingers. For better or worse, the rural setting ignited my imagination. I was unable to walk home from school without imaging a gunfight erupting outside the post office or an explosion coming from the local pub. I was convinced that my headmaster was embroiled in a murder gardening cult, and I was always watching out for the hood stalker from the movie. Whilst the film was not entirely age-trained, appropriate, it passed my school lunchtimes faster. Suddenly, me and my friends were Sergeant Nicholas Angel, Simon Begg, patrolling the yard on imaginary horseback. Once I persuaded them to each watch the film, we'd regale each other with our favorite scenes and the coolest moments. The action in the Hot Fuzza is delightfully over the top. Yet, this intentional style was lost on us. In reality, we were all more like Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, in awe at the exploits of a gun-toting detective, delirious on justice. We pledged ourselves to uncovering the wrongdoings of our small village with swift and decisive action. For the record, I think the only case we solved was about a missing lunchbox, revisiting a Hot Fuzza over a decade later. The similarity in Butterman's childish delight and my 8-year-old Do is surprisingly uncanny. Neither of us understood that violence had consequences, and we both just wanted to see things blow up. But the Hot Fuzza is more than the action flick it was in my childhood. It is a stellar piece of filmmaking that has set the bar for the British film industry this century. It is achingly funny and often heartfelt. Rita is an obviously competent action director, but he truly excels at comedy. Every joke is reinforced by a frenzied close zoom or a swift quick pan away. His filmmaking is fast and confident, flourishing with every chance he gets. For only his second film, A Hot Fuzza is a near flawless outing. The script penned by successfully balances homage and parody, riffing off the action genre with clear love and affection. This film rewards endless rewatching as every shot is crammed with as many visual jokes the crew could work in. The dialogue is endlessly quotable and sparkling with either genius hideous or idiotic genius. The interplay between the Sanford police is a blitz of acidic contempt or platonic love, both of which are equally hilarious. Whilst the action still holds up, it's the smaller moments in which A Hot Fuzz truly shines. Simon Pegg is often dismissed as a comedic sidekick, a role he's often relegated to in the company of actors such as Sue Chris Pinea or Tom Cruise. Yet, this film proves Pegg should be a bona fide action icon. He's the centerpiece that anchors the narrative together, towing the line between a Clint Eastwood impersonator or a Harrison for the tribute act. It is an enigmatic leading man turn, though he would later surpass himself as Gary King of the world's Inda. Another Edgar, Wright film. His straight man is complemented by Nick Frost, whose comedic sidekick is giddy, childish, and lovable. Angel and Butterman are one of the great film double acts. This side of the new millennium, the leading pair are supported by an incredible caliber of supporting stars, such as Saja Jim Broadbent, Olivia Kamana, and Patty Considine. The highlight of this acting buffet is Timothy Daltona as Simon Scanner. Dalton is reveling in his antagonistic role. He is snide, sinister, and an absolute delight. He chews up the scenery with a performance that is reminiscent of a Hammer horror film. This is a gothic maniac running a supermarket, which is as barmy and wonderful as it sounds. Whilst the childlike bloodlust may have diminished, A Hot Fuzza is still a firm favorite of mine. The combination of Hollywood action and rustic aesthetics results in an effortlessly funny thrill. Wright and Pegg successfully pay homage to the buddy cop action genre. Yet they still imbue their own outing with enough originality to keep things fresh. While Stur's filmography is an exceptional slate of work, this film still resides almost at the very top. A Hot Fuzza is a cocktail of thrills, spills, and unlikely friendship, a blast from start to finish. It has been remarked by more than one critic that the action comedy can be one of the easiest movies to make poorly and one of the most difficult to make effectively. The problem is evident. Comedy and action often war with one another, each trying to steal the spotlight at the expense of the other. If there's too much humor or the jokes are too fatuous, the action feels extraneous. And if the film is slanted toward action, the comedy can feel out of place, and if poorly executed, can kill the momentum. The team of Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, the guys who combined Goofus and Garena, Shaun of the Dead, have elected to follow their offbeat zombie farce with an action comedy. Considering their earlier success, it is perhaps unsurprising that they have gotten it mostly right. A Hot Fuzza is a little too long and suffers from a sagging midsection when the level of exposition becomes laborious, but the spectacularly entertaining final 30 minutes compensates for a lot of flaws. One key element that Wright and Pregnant nail is to develop characters we care about and situations that, while not breathtakingly compelling, are at least interesting. While there have been plenty of exceptions throughout the years, 48 Hours, True Lies, and so forth, A Broken Bar, the generic action comedy cannot boast either quality. Often, action scenes are just flashy ways to pad out things between the jokes, and the protagonists are thinly drawn caricatures. Given the backing of someone with money, it's easy enough to make those soulless by-the-numbers comedies, and we see a few every year. Attempting and succeeding at something more ambitious is the mark of an interesting filmmaker. In the end, A Hot Fuzz does for the action comedy wattish of the dead for the horror comedy. Sergeant Nicholas Angel Begg is the ultimate cop. He's so good that his superiors in London have him transferred to the tiny BB of Sanford because his superlative record is making his co-workers look bad. He arrives in the village and immediately begins applying the letter of the law to every circumstance. Angel's laid-back superior, Inspector Frank Butterman, Jim Broadbent, encourages the newcomer to relax and partners him with his bumbling son, Danny Nick Frost. Danny is enthused, but nailed Democron V and bombards Angel with questions about his big city police exploits. Has he ever fired guns in both hands? Has he ever fired a gun while leaping through the air? Has he ever fired a gun while involved in a high-speed pursuit? Police work in Sanford is comprised of momentous events like chasing down a missing swan or rebuking a man illegally clipping a neighbor's hedges. But a sudden rash of deaths gives the police something new to investigate. Everyone assumes they're accidents except Angel, who believes they are murders orchestrated by the Machiavelli and Simon Skinner. Timothy Dalton, who owns the local grocery store and is scheming to increase the scope of his empire. Hot Fuzzer relies so heavily on character and plot development that it takes an overall 90 minutes before things start getting outrageous. That's not to say the setup is without merit, but the humor during these sequences is more restrained than what comes later. There are plenty of subtle jabs, visual gags, and a few high-profile cameos. Kate Blanchett, Peter Jackson, Bill Nye, the wink-wink, nudge-nudge buddy relationships between partners. Angel and Danny is developed in such a way that it mimics the formula of a romantic liaison without ever straying beyond the platonic. This is part of the parody. These two never whisper sweet nothings or engage in anything that might disturb homophobes, but they fall asleep on the ouch next to each other after watching movies on TV, and Angel later buys flowers for Danny. The movie has fun toying with this dynamic. Then 30 minutes before the film winds down, all hell breaks loose. The filmmakers pull out the stops and satirize every imaginable cliché ailed the copyright of the genre, throwing in visual references to dozens of contemporary cop movies. John Woo, Quentin Tarantino, and Clint Eastwood would collide in a hail of gunfire as the Fuzz go guns blazing to reclaim the grocery store and the town from the nefarious do-batters who have taken possession of it. And just because this is a comedy doesn't mean Wright shies from gore. The impaling of one character is shown in the most graphic manner possible. There are no sacred cows either. Priests blaspheme, and an old woman gets kicked in the face. Pegg is note perfect as the tough cop who begins to show signs of humanity before donning the dark glasses and arming himself with more ammo than Rambo. Nick Frost couldn't be better cast as the wimpy sidekick who grows a backbone under Angel's tout lodge. Jim Broadbent brings a genial paternal quality to his role as Inspector Bodman, and there's a great scene in which he takes charge. Timothy Dalton's villain will remind viewers more of his role up the Rocketeer than his short-term duty as the world's most famous superspeed. Hot Fuzza is the second police satire to arrive in theaters this year, and it is vastly superior to Arena 901. That earlier film is an example of what happens when a movie uses lame material to tie together an uneven string of jokes. A Hot Fuzza has a higher agenda, and it shows this movie wants to tickle the funny bone while telling a story that's worth telling. For the most part, Wright achieves the same. A slightly trimmed down A Hot Fuzza might have provided a more heady broom, but even with a little more fat than is necessary, this one offers enjoyable fare with more than one masterful course. Wait, you've seen 2004's as Shaun of the Dead, haven't you? Could be you. Didn't. The British film never got a wide release here in the United States. So drop everything you've got on tape for today. Go rent a copy or buy one. Trust me and discover the smartest, grossest, tenderest, most outrageously funny zombie romantic comedy ever made. And then watch it again. Trust me, you'll want to. Now you're ready for a hot fuzz from the Wildly with you guys. Writer-star Simon Bagg and writer-director Edgar Wright. There was a palpable sense with the Shauna that Bagg and Wright had in their first feature film. They'd previously worked on several TV series together, instantly established a signature style, and a Fuzzy confirms that it's its own unique creature, a send-up of buddy cop movies, with no supernatural elements whatsoever. A bet it's just as visually lively, just as crammed full of clever and literate wordplay, just as screamingly hilarious, where it's most vitally the same as Shauna is in its deep love of movies. Oh, A Fuzza is all about taking down Hollywood action movie excess, and affectionately tweaking the cliché tilde copyrightus of the genre. But it does that from a place of understanding and fanish worship. Wright and Pegg get it exactly right. They know that there's something weirdly schizophrenic in the love-hate relationship serious movie lovers have with the absurd extremes Hollywood can go to. And the fuzza, a way more so than a shah, springs from that half-protective, half-disdainful feeling only truly demented fans know. We're allowed to make fun of this stuff because we love it so much, but we'll defend it if anyone else dares to say a negative word about it. And so we have highly decorated London police officer Nicholas Angel, who's so good at what he does that he's making his colleagues look bad pegged as Nicholas finds a completely different demeanor for his super cop. Nicholas is sleek and confident, and almost unrecognizably unlike the schlubby slacker his Sean was. So his bosses, A1, of which is played by the effortlessly funny Bill Nye, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, ship him off to Sanford, a small, quiet village where high crimes consist of underage drinking and loitering in the town square. Oh, and once in a while, a swan will escape its confines, and its recapture will require police intervention. Nicholas is bored out of his mind, of course, and finds himself lumbered with a partner, Danny, Butterman Nick Frost, also from Michonne, whose police instincts have been formed by Michael Bay movies. A Fuzzy explicitly references flicks like He Bad Boys I and a Point Break A. And later when Pegg and Wright ratchet up the satire, there are slime ads to a Terminator 2A and the Robocopa and a dozen other classic action movies, cop movies, and buddy movies. A bet it doesn't tape them. A fuzza is a wonderfully original Frankenstein monster that hangs together beautifully and would be astonishing if we hadn't already witnessed this kind of miracle. Lean non. It's not merely that a fuzza achieves a totally different kind of rhythm from Hollywood films, which makes it feel fresh. This is very British and has not been Americanized in the least. Hey, but that it also manages to be so many kinds of clever. This is a cozy Miss Marple mystery, with townsfolk suddenly dying in mysterious ways that are 9 Sojant Tilas in a battered old paperback novel, and yet somehow still captures them feeling. And the lack of concern, the locals seem to have accidents happen, don't you know, and there's really no need to involve the police. This is a cunning commentary on the surveillance society that had taken over Britain, the neighborhood, on hoodie-wearing hooligans, and a lot more in Sanford. This is a sweetly effective portrait of male friendship, as Nicholas and Danny become, of course, closer than either of them could have imagined when they first met. As American comedies almost entirely failed to do, though not for lack of trying, A Fuzza Ends Up did a surprising mix of outrageous humor and genuine sentiment in which neither aspect fights with the other, but instead complements it. The absurdity of the cartoon emotion of a Michael Bay flick, which Danny suggests Nicholas watch in an attempt to loosen up a bit, is completely transformed by the end of Faf into a moment that is as comical as it is touching. It's a smack at Hollywood and a hug as if to say, look, you big dumb lugs, we love you, but this is how you do it right. Nicholas Angel was made for police work. He shoots right to the top of his class at the academy and soon becomes an exemplary officer. So exemplary, in fact, that he makes everyone else look bad. So his superiors ship him off to the sleepy little village of Sanford. The English country folk are somewhat more laid back than the go-get cop. Police Chief Butterman appreciates his dedication, but suggests he slow his pace to avoid a nervous breakdown. Nick's only supporter is the police chief's son, Danny, a lazy junk food aholic cop who's excited about partnering with the newcomer and wants to know about all his exploits in London. Danny isn't much of an officer, but he has been inspired by hundreds of action movies such as A Point Breaker and The Bad Boys 2, and he dreams of leaping into action, dispensing bullets, and witty repartee. Nick keeps a sharp eye out, but chasing an escaped swan seems to be the only action in the Sleepy Bee. Then people start dying in grisly accidents, and the sleuthing sergeant realizes that Sanford may have the lowest crime and murder rates in the country, but its accidental death rate is off the charts. Positive elements. Nick is a dedicated officer who goes out of his way to follow the rule of law and do what's right. At one point, a man is threatening people with a pistol, and Nick uses his body to shield a young boy. While failing at general police work, Danny proves himself to be a good friend. When Nick is being fired upon, Danny steps out of a place of safety and runs to fight by his friend's side. He also dives in front of Nick and takes a gun blast for him. Spiritual elements. Whenever the police officers use foul language around the station house, they are required to drop a coin in the swear box. The proceeds are donated to the local church. The town holds a public raffle to help pay for a new church. Roof. Nick is asked to speak at church, but he demurs because of his lack of belief. A killer dresses in a cloaked druid's robe. Several town members also dress in these same robes and chant in Neo. Latin. The Reverend pulls a gun, shoots a man, swears and profanes Jesus' name. Sexual romantic content. It is implied that Doris, the sole female on the Sanford force, is sexually promiscuous. She makes a number of wise cracks to that effect. Doris also makes a few off-color comments about some of the accident victims, motivating an older officer to blurt out crude sexual remarks. Beyond showing a little cleavage, Doris wears a formed plastic top to a party that looks like bare breasts. The local store owner mentions that his assistant moonlights as a table dancer. Two actors kiss in a stage play and later in their dressing room. Violent content. Hot Fuzz uses over-the-top violence as a way to elicit laughs, and in doing soaks audiences with gory, intensely bloody scenes that appear very realistic. When a peak piece of masonry is broken off the roof of an old church and dropped to the ground below, it falls point first and obliterates the head of a man, driving all the way down through his neck and into his upper body. Likewise, another unfortunate soul falls on a model of a church, and the spiral drives up through his chin and sticks out through his mouth. He talks with a jam there. A woman is stabbed in the chest with garland shears and staggers about, spurting blood. A man and woman are decapitated with an axe, and we see their heads lying in the road. A man is hit in the head, and his house is blown up, tossing his charred remains into the street. Nick jumps over a fence to stop an old woman who is trying to shoot him. He kicks her in the face, and she falls backward. We see her later with a bloody face. A large man batters and bloodies Nick, throwing him around the bedroom and through the aisles of a store. Nick hits a kid in the head with a can of spray paint. Danny accidentally shoots a man at a carnival with an air gun. Nick holds a large knife to a man's throat. A man is shot in the foot when a shotgun hits the ground and discharges. Spoiler. Warning. A battle breaks out in the streets of Sanford with thunder shots and explosions. Nick and Danny jump in and out of cover with guns blazing. Bullets destroy building fronts and interiors, shatter store cases, and blow out windows. Several people are shot and wounded. Danny fakes poking his eye out with the fork and uses ketchup to simulate blood, crude or profane language. Over 20 Fords, including at least one use of myrrh, and about 10 swords are scattered throughout the film along with a handful of other profanities such as N and ha dot, obscene slang. The strongest terms possible are assigned to sex acts as well as male and female body parts. Jesus' name is profaned. Drug alcohol content. All of the Sanford police officers at one time or another drink wine or pints of beer in the local pub. Nick and Danny become inebriated. Danny almost backs his vehicle over Nick while driving drunk. A drunken man falls down and then stumbles away from the bar to urinate in the corner of the room. Nick mentions an uncle who sold drugs to children. Officers smoke in several scenes. Other note for the elements, Nick breaks up with a woman at the beginning of the movie, but it's never revealed if the two were married. Conclusion. Hot Fuzz was created by the same team that gave birth and living death to the zombie flick Boof, a Shaun of the Dead. This time around, they grab their .44 Magnums and take aim at the American buddy car genre. Fuzza adopts a straight-faced approach to movie formula in jokes and cliché dilda copyright as worthy of a suitcase full of action movies, but it aims higher or lower, depending on your perspective, than the broad, goofy slapstick that we've become accustomed to from genre spoofs. This pick is as much a homage to American action flicks as it is a spoof, blending dry British wit with heavy kick to the face, fall sideways while unloading your automatic weapon action. That high-powered tip of the hat, which reveals a smirk underneath, also includes excessive and outrageous gore. As mentioned earlier, the filmmakers try to use the unexpectedly vicious bloodletting as a humorous device, but you're too busy grimacing to smile. And unlike A Dead, which at least offered viewers some sort of metaphorical subtext to consider in between splatters, a Hot Fuzza appears to be all about assault. It's a tricky thing, a cult hit. How do you follow it up? Do you ride the hype? Go Hollywood and risk being called a sellout, or stay small and potentially confine yourself to also out columns for the rest of your days? The Shaun of the Dead team has aimed for a point precisely between the two, and if they haven't quite hit the bullseye, they've come extremely close. Hot Fuzz has a much harder job to do than Shaun. Zombies overrunning the suburbs and being fought off by a pair of layboats armed only with arrested development and on-demand flatulence is an obviously ripe idea. Big city policemen get sent to the leafy land of cream teas and women's incidents. It all sounds a bit too heartbeat to get the heart racing. Fuzz never quite achieves the boundless creativity of Shaun, but Wright and Pegg throw every joke they have at the concept until they tickle the audience into giddy submission. The vast share of the appeal is down to the laid-back chemistry between Bag and Frost. After almost a decade together, they're clearly so comfortable in each other's presence that they feel no need to fight, for the punchline making them terrific company for 2 hours. It's initially strange to see Eternal Craft follower Pegg playing the straight man, and the first 20 minutes pass slightly sluggishly as we're introduced to his Nicholas Angel, the kind of humorless jobs you'd studiously avoid at the office party. Alone, he's a bit of an irritating Dugador, but once he meets Pumpkin Officer PC Danny Butterman Frost, his dull stoicism becomes the perfect comic foil for Frost, who effortlessly grundles off with the show. But Danny is an endearing pied sugared up puppy of a man packed tightly with one-liners that you'll be quoting long after your friends have stopped speaking to you because you won't shut the hell up, right? And Pegg's talent with incidental character quirks extends to the rest of the villagers. They may be archetypes, but they're very funny archetypes. Paddy Considine and Rafe's Ball get a lot of mileage out of relatively little screen time as a pair of bellows inspectors and returns a single vocal tick into one of the film's best scenes. And Timothy Dalton is so sneeringly, uproariously suspicious that he might as well be twirling his mustache, stroking a white cat, and ending all his lines with mwaha. We could go on, but word counts forbid. Wright is not just in this for the comedy. However, he wants to be an action director too. He's certainly far from a slouch in this department, but by boldly referencing the films of Michael Bay, Tony Scott, and Catherine Bigelow, he's setting himself a high benchmark. A-okay, maybe marginally less so with Bigelow. He strikes a confident balance between the laughs and stunts, and his action hits have plenty of bang and flashy editing, but he does lack the ultra-cool humus. I wish I was that guy moments that mark out a great action set piece. Yet, if Hot Fuzz can only boast of being a good action movie, it is confidently a great comedy. The wits behind the controlled chaos that is Hot Fuzz, a parody of Hollywood-style action flicks, build a somewhat heavier comic cajole than they did in their last big screen outing, the zombie caper Shaun of the Dead. This time, as they say in the blow-up business, it's personal, or at least somewhat personalized, since the more obvious targets here include high-octane producer like Jerry Bruckheimer and Joel Silver, who with their fat budgets and armies of heavily armed bad boys have helped define the modern action spectacular, reshaping the old Kisses Bang Bang movie experience into the cinema of lock and load. Simon Begg, the snub-nosed cricket bath-swinging blonde avenger of Shaun of the Dead, plays Nicholas Angel, a crack London police officer who's bounced to a small town by his inferior superiors, Bill Nye, Steve Coogan, Martin Freeman, smirking and smiling for being just too damn good at his job. Banished to the sticks, where a missing snow-colored swan initially proves the only investigative distraction. He finds himself desperate for action. He rousts some teenagers from the local pub. But outside of fielding smutty insults from the precinct sleigh about detectives, Paddy Considine and Rafe's Ball as Matching and Mustachio does a Tom of Finland cartoon. There's little to do but water his lily plant and nurse his cranberry juice nightcap. There are few girls allowed inside the Breckheimer and Silver clubhouses, and so it is here. Although the homosocial worlds of Massers, Breheimer, and Silver and Occasion make room for a Venus in leather like Karan Moss, or more routinely an eonatal size wave like Karanately. These are testosterone-fueled domains largely defined by an actual. It's a world that Mr. Bagg and the film's director Edgar Wright, who together wrote the awfully funny screenplay, know intimately and recreate with admirable feeling from the hearts. Crashing edits to the soft, tender looks exchanged by Angel and his slaverishly attentive sidekick Danny Butterman, Nick Frost. It's a world in which boys will be boys at every available opportunity. Nicholas Angel Simon Begg is a police constable who's very skilled at his job based on his dedication into being the most exemplary cop in London. He's so good, in fact, he's promoted to sergeant and is to relocate to the sleepy town of Sanford, Gloucester, just because he's making everyone on the force look bad. Once he arrives, there's nothing precisely exciting, especially when he's paired up with fellow constable Danny B-Man, Nick Frost. The modest lifestyle changes when a string of mysterious and gruesome murders occur in the village all of a sudden. So now it's up to Nicholas to put all the pieces together to find out what's tying everything to these recent deaths. After Edgar Wright made a considerable impression with 2004's As Shown of the Data with his buddies Pegg Frost, give him anything even more creative for his next project, which comes in the dorm of the action buddy Camilla Hot Fuzz. When I was a kid, I wanted to see this at the movies since it looked exciting and funny, a combination that rarely fails with the people involved. But that didn't happen, though I used to have a poster in my old bedroom that mysteriously disappeared. So whenever anyone talks about classic comedies of the 2000s, everyone will be in relief when this gets mentioned, because it's one that never gets old. Added just like how his previous film plays homage to the best zombie flicks, Wright wanted this to be a nice send-up to old-school buddy cop films. They have been popular over the decades when we had the Lethal Weapon series, A Point Break, and others. And A Hot Fuzzy came out at the right time for a film that wasn't going down as a forgettable time. There's no denying these guys love their action movies and love the genre enough to make it both realistic and cliché till the copyright simultaneously. But in the best way, this was something you can tell Wright always wanted to make one, or one that takes place in the UK. So it was up to him and Pegg to write a comedy that would blow everyone they came out prior out of the water. Did they make it work? You bet. Added days of being a cop will never happen with me, since I'll stick to seeing actors portraying them for the time being. But the way Wright keeps things at a minimum at first and raises suspicions throughout doesn't make for a dull side through, thankfully. Of course, not every American action movie isn't as crazy, since we don't see a ton of them going about their days with car chases, explosions, or anything Danny always imagined it would be. Still, you never know when the situation calls for it, especially when a town like Sanford hasn't had a dangerous problem in decades. Everything about A Hot Fuzz, much like the other installments in the Three Flavors Corn trilogy, is always wise in making you believe one thing, and it turns out to be true. Its clever usage of references and callbacks never fails to help anyone with several plot points. There's a nice balance of when it needs to be funny and when it wants to be serious, surrounding the investigation of these numerous murders suddenly happening day after day. That level of excitement boosts strong reactions in how Wright and company manage to poke fun at the typical tropes in action movies without becoming entirely silly. Though it's easy to spot some of them are dumb, this showcases why. Anytime Simon Bagg and Nick Frost are playing opposite each other, that will always be a guaranteed win from me. Their performances of Nicholas and Danny never fail to make me laugh. These two started differently from one another, since Nicholas is the straight man who takes his job seriously, while Danny presents himself as a bumbling guy who loves to drink and watch action movies that inspire him. Though he's not as dumb as it may seem, since their characters take a bit of time to build this relationship. They need each other to push through their may. Flaws. That has always been a recurring core theme that's always told well in these films. Aside from them, I love Timothy Dalton going from James Bond to villain Simon Skinner, who always gives these not-so-subtle hints he could be the bad guy, and Jim Broadbent as Danny's dad, Frank, adds to being another standout in the cast. As always, this hits it out of the park at making you constantly laugh at the minor details you overlook the first time, but caught on several rewatches. The banter between Nick and Danny is amusing at best, even when a scene takes the time to develop them. Talking about why they decided to be cops. Anything else with the missing swan or the sheer oblivious of Skinner never gets old. Combining all that with the action, it doesn't disappoint when done through Wright's editing style. The third act goes over the top when it all culminates in a rollout shootout in the sleepy English town. That kind of energy was unexpected, but you can't help but get psyched out of your mind with the adrenaline kicked onto gear. Overall, A Hot Fuzza shows how impressive a director Edgar Wright is with this memorable send-up of buddy cop movies with his comedic edge. Smartly written, action-packed, and carried over with dynamic performances of its two leads. It's endlessly fun from beginning to end. Many fans have this as their favorite Wright film, and there are never any complaints right there, since it's a general hit one must find entertaining. Not following the route of a sophomore slump. It features one would love about action comedies, the way many won't have problems. For me, it's my second favorite in the Cornudo trilogy, and it only gets better with time. A Hot Fuzza is a cop movie and a parody of cop movies. The setup is simple and inspired. Sergeant Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg, is a London super cop. He is so good at his job that he makes the rest of the force look like donuts. After a while, even the most supportive colleagues get fed up with his flawlessness, and his bosses contrive to send him away. They send him to a quaint little hamlet that has the lowest crime rate in all of England. His first bust is at the local pub where underage drinkers enjoy wholesome fun. He kicks them out onto the street where, ironically, they can do more damage. But the law is the law, and Angel has no room for gray areas. He is assigned a partner. Danny Nick Frost, whose dad, the chief, Jim Broadbent, got him the job. Still, Danny knows everything there is to know about police. Movies. The actual police work involves eating cake, stopping at the local grocer's for ice cream, and knowing all the locals by name. The movie cruises along at a pleasant, if uneven on clip. There are jokes about small towns, about cops, and about cop movies. All the while, the plot slowly thickens. Local deaths are written off as accidents, and the local investigations inevitably lead nowhere. Sanford may have the lowest crime rate, but it seems to have the most accident-prone citizens in all of England. The soundtrack and editing tell Yismaz that Timothy Dalton's character, a local bun, is somehow behind it all, whatever it all may turn out to be. Where of the Dead looked like a string of references and genre jokes. It held together as a movie. The characters had to grow to overcome their troubles. Through it all, there was a wonderful social commentary on the attitudes of youth in suburban England. Coming from a group of 20-somes, the message rang true and clear. In contrast, A Hot Fuzz really is just a string of references and genre jokes with little more than an average plot to hold it together. The filmmakers have made the case that Angel also has to grow to overcome his troubles. But when you're a super cop whose biggest vice is to not watching enough movies and drinking enough beer with your mates, the message doesn't resonate. There was a scene in A Hot Fuzza where I thought everything was coming together. It plays near the end. A cop and a villain are fighting in an intricately built toy village. At the surface, the scene, visual humor of two Godzillic figures destroying a less little town. The humor was justified by the plot because the hero was in the heat of a chase trying to subdue the villain. And there was a rich metaphor that really worked with the rest of the film. Excess police violence. Even in the name of justice, A was destroying a small community, just as Angel of the underage drinkers was probably doing more harm than good. Layers of entertainment were working together in service of underlying theme, just as Xena Shaun of the Dead. Too bad it was only one scene. There are a lot of jokes, some purely visual and tucked in the background. Dada Hot Fuzza is a movie you could watch over and over again, especially with a pause button handy. But to get that quantity, writers Pegg and Wright allow themselves to draw from too broad a field. So Hot Fuzza suffers from a lack of focus. Supercop doesn't drink. When socially forced into ordering some alcohol, he asks about the wine list. It's funny, and it's vaguely in character. Although why would someone who doesn't drink know his wines? But is that really a cop movie cliché-ailed copyright? The revelation about the identity of the villain plays more like Agatha Christie than Jerry Bruckheimer. There are also a couple scenes of gruesome bloody gore played for laughs that works well when you're parodying horror films, but cop movies are about the explosions and the guns, not the creative use of gardening shears. Compare this to a Team America World Police, which got the tone just right. Oh, how I've been waiting for a movie to come along and directly make fun of Bad Boys 2. That alone makes Hot Fuzz worth the price of admission. Here is a British comedy that looks down on and up to all the lame-brain Hollywood action movies of the past 20 years with both amusement and shame. Besides being laugh-out-loud funny, the movie is smart in its execution. It's not a parody like The Naked Gun or Scary Movie series. It's more complete and better written. It's a full-fledged action movie that lives by the genre's rules, but it's also cheerfully aware of itself. Hot Fuzz does for action what Scream did for horror. Hollywood had Hot Fuzz coming for a while now. Since modern action pictures have gotten so silly and over-stylized, and sometimes even offensive in nature, see Bad Boys 2. It's high time some ambitious filmmakers came along, foreigners no less, and asked directors like Michael Bay, "Are you for real?" The main targets here are buddy cop movies that take themselves too seriously. You know the kind. Their posters feature men with a machismo complex, contemplating taking the law into their own hands. They often wear sunglasses and appear in deep thought, looking off into the distance. The taglines read something like, "Now it's personal." Look at the poster of Hot Fuzz, and you will get the idea. It's important to note the movie isn't mean in its approach. It's jolly and affectionate. I sense the filmmakers weren't angry at the movies they victimize. Appreciate and admire them. Without movies like Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, and The Matrix, Hot Fuzz couldn't exist. So, it pays rightful homage to its predecessors. The director is Edgar Wright, whose Shaun of the Dead 2004 turned the zombie genre upside down by turning it into a matter-of-fact farce. With a charming dry wit with hot fuzzies, Wright teams with his Shaun of the Dead star Simon Pegg, who also co-wrote both films. It's clear the two are on a roll in what's sure to be an elongated and daft, highly profitable filmmaking partnership. Pegg plays Nicholas Angel, a London police officer with an impeccable service record and an arrest rate that's 400% higher than anyone else on the force. His work has become his life, and his superiors think he's too good at his job. So good, in fact, that he's making them look bad. They request he transfer to the quiet little village of Sanford, where the most serious crimes are underage drinking and graffiti on public property. It's a far cry from the shoot-'em-up mean streets of London. The Sanford police squad is nothing like Angel is used to. His new partner is the gluttonous but lovable Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, whom Angel busts for drunk driving, and whose father is the chief inspector, Jim Broadbent. Danny believes Angel to be the kind of cop who's seen it all. Shootouts, car chases, drug busts, everything that his huge collection of action movie DVDs have promised really exists in the world of crime fighting. Angel and Danny find themselves in the middle of a bizarre murder investigation where the killer runs around in a black cloak and off seemingly random victims. This leads Angel to wonder if the quaint little town of Sanford may not be so innocent after all. The violence in Hot Fuzz is completely outrageous, lurid, and laughable. Even though it sets out to be farcical, it's as professionally executed as any John McTiernan or Tony Scott film. But director Wright doesn't allow the action to overshadow the humor. The two find a balance so the movie can pay heed action genre, while at the same time deconstructing and lampooning it. The memorable supporting cast, who all look like they're having loads of fun, includes former James Bond Timothy Dalton, Paul Freeman, Bill Nye, Martin Freeman, Patty Considine, Stuart Wilson, and Edward Winward. It's neat how the ending of this movie mirrors that of 1973's The Wicker Man, which also starred Woodward. If I wasn't laughing at the screen, I was smiling. Fans of Hollywood action movies owe it to themselves to see it, while non-fans will get a kick out of the way it fights back and ridicules antiquated conventions. As a brother of the movies it so flippantly mocks, Hot Fuzz will surely be remembered as a creative satire that demands new rules be made for the action genre. If you have not been paying attention to movie releases lately, you may have missed this gem. Well, a broken bar. That is, if you are still living in 2007. Something that I know a bunch of us are increasingly wishing. We Were Due a Hot Fuzz is a wild ride that does not stop packing in the humor with a strong plot to boot. I had not heard of this movie until a few weeks ago, but after watching it, I can say that it is timeless. Sure, the media is filled with police and spy movies and shows, and they tend to follow the same plot lines, or story beats. Still, even though it was released 15 years ago, you need to see this movie. A Hot Fuzz is a biting satire of that exact genre that begins like any other police movie. A skilled police officer, Nicholas Angel, is moved in disgrace to a small rural town. Personal and relationship issues bound as we meet the cast of characters who live in the village. Enter the village of Fasanford, which is located on the picturesque English countryside and is a regular village of the year winner. Incredibly small and quiet, Sanford is known in the movie for their rock-bottom crime rate, which irritates our efficient main character. While on the surface, many of the colorful cast of characters we meet are helpful and appreciative of the new police sergeant. Things are not so great underneath. Do not worry, dear reader. I will not spoil any of the actual plot of the movie. As one of my friends who forced me to watch it said, it is best to go in blind. Please do not look up any spoilers. Even just looking up images of the movie will put you on an absolute spiral of trying to find out what any of them mean. Even the movie poster we are putting up alongside this review does not do this wonderful movie justice. The humor surprised me the most throughout the movie. I had been forewarned that the movie was a comedy, but Hot Fuzz does an admirable job at attacking humor through a number of different avenues. It is not just slapstick comedy, but rather has a little bit for everyone who wants to laugh. Yet if you think Hot Fuzz is only laughs, then you are dead wrong. There is a mystery for Angel to solve in the village of Sanford, and you will find yourself trying to solve it along with the characters. You will be second-guessing yourself, then a third-guessing yourself as the story twists and turns. I almost had the ending guessed, but it hit it out of the park. The last thing that I suspected from Hot Fuzz was a story that stood on its own apart from the comedy, but the movie did not care and gave it to me anyway. The characters are likable, mostly memorable, and decently developed for what is a satirical fap movie. There are tons of shows and movies coming out, all of which have grabbed my attention for the coming weeks, but I will take the advice of one of my professors. Old gold is still gold. Hot Fuzz is not the newest or shiniest thing, but it truly is gold. Let me begin this review by simply pointing out the rating of the movie Hot Fuzz. It is rated R, not PG or PG-13. It is rated R, and it is rated that way for a reason. While there have been issues made over how certain movies are rated, I assure you that the rating given to Hot Fuzz is completely deserved. I bring this up because once again, I am absolutely appalled by the number of children I saw wandering the theater while I watched the movie. I counted at the very least 10 children under the age of maybe 12 absorbing the hour-rated entertainment right along with the rest of the adults in the room. Last time I checked, R meant not appropriate for children under 17, but for some reason, parents continue to allow their children to view material not intended for them. Please, any parents reading this review, do not let your child or children see this or any other movie that is not appropriate for them to be watching. Half of the time, these movies are hardly appropriate for adults to be watching, let alone impressionable children. Hot Fuzz comes from the British team that brought us the gruesome yet funny Shaun of the Dead, a homage of sorts to the zombie classics that came before it. Once again, they present an homage, but this time to buddy cop action movies. Simon Pegg plays Nicholas Angel, a sergeant in the London Metropolitan Police Force, so good at his job that his superiors feel threatened by his zeal for his job. They decide that instead of having him around to make them all look bad, they will transfer him away to a quiet, uneventful village in the English countryside. Upon arrival, Nicholas sees petty crimes being committed everywhere and sets his foot down as a new force in town to be reckoned with. He arrests a man for drunk driving, but discovers the next morning that the man is one of the members of the town's bumbling police crew. The man's name is Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, and his father is Inspector Frank Butterman, Jim Broadbent, the head of the department. Nicholas is partnered with Danny, and the two patrol town, responding to calls about lost swans and neighbors trimming each other's hedges. Things start getting interesting when two members of town are killed in an automobile accident that looks nothing like an accident to Nicholas. More accidents happen in the safest town in Null, England, and Nicholas sets out to determine what's really going on in his quiet little town. The content in Hot Fuzz will likely keep many Christians away. While there isn't as much offensive language as there was in Shaun of the Dead, the violence is right on par with that film and may actually exceed it. There are many bloody, gruesome deaths in the film, a couple of which actually drew some surprised gasps. There is language with around 20 Fords. There are also a few irreverent uses of the Lord's name in vain, one by a priest that was particularly offensive, but drew laughs from the crowd. There isn't a whole lot of sexual content. A couple are assumed to be having an affair. A few crude jokes are made, and a female police officer wears a pair of plastic breasts over her uniform during a birthday party. Suffice it to say, the content is for adults only, and parents should not allow children and teenagers to watch this movie. I have to admit, though, that I have become quite fond of the pairing of Femon PGA and Nick Frost. The real-life friends have a chemistry unmatched by most recent Hollywood pairings, and both have shown in Shaun of the Dead, and now here in Hot Fuzz, that they are quite capable at the surprising dramatic scenes that the films contain. They are funny and likable, and show themselves at times as vulnerable, something you don't expect to see in a film of this nature. I was a big fan of Shaun of the Dead, and while this film isn't as funny or as smart as that one, it has its own charm and is a decent option for adults only. His is a cop movie with a different mixing in English, police mysteries such as Agatha Christie and Mismer Murders, and big-budget cop films such as Bad Boys. The result, a funny, action-packed, and overall fuzz-tastic movie. Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg, is a cop who literally has no life via his life as the police force in London. Ever since he was a little kid, all he wanted to be was a copa, even when, as shown in a recount by Angel, his uncle was not entirely a good example as a cop dealing with the drug market. He's decreased crime by 400% in London, graduated at the top of the class, a broken bar, and apparently he makes the whole London police squad look shoddy by being a one-man police force. The result, the chief inspector, Bill Nye, promotes Angel to sergeant to broken bar and relocates him to a sleepy village called Sandford. There, Angel struggled as a broken bar. He is given trivial jobs such as chasing a runway goose and is partnered with a dim-witted yet well-meaning constable named Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, whose father is the top guy in the Sandford police force. However, just as Angel is beginning to despair that anything police-worthy will happen in Sandford, a heap of gory and grisly murders start to pop up around the village, committed by a mystery person that looks more like the Grim Reaper. Angel then realizes that Sandford may not be the sleepy village that it seems to be. This is an ingenious movie that would satisfy most people. It has a well-flowing storyline, as well as some black humor, great script, and some great action. Pegg does a great job as Angel, and his partnership with Butterman shows well in the movie. The character development between the two increases well as the movie goes on, as each tries to understand the other. The humor was razor sharp, mainly shone in the lines and also in some silly yet still funny action. One example of that was where Angel leaps over a heap of fences seemingly effortlessly, while his partner Butterman can't even get over the first fencia. He bulldozes it instead. I can't give away much more than that. A broken bar, otherwise I'd spoil the movie for you. However, having said that, this is not a movie that everyone will choose to see. There are very gory bits scattered throughout the movie, mainly through the grisly murders that are committed throughout the movie. There are beheadings, a graphic stabbing, a head blows to bits in a grisly murder, and someone gets their chin impaled quite graphically. Undoubtedly, in this case, little is left to the imagination. So, if blood makes you turn green, then maybe this movie is not for you. As well as that, there are the usual cop gun battles and punch-ups as well, which isn't as concerning as the former. Profanity was also a problem within the movie. However, it was funny that the Sanford money in a tin box and the proceeds would go to repairs of the village's church roof. Now, if only Hollywood would introduce that concept for future movie as a broken bar, as well as the vicious violence and the moderate profanity. There were a couple of things that I found to be offensive in this flick. One is a degradation of God in this movie. This is shown in a conversation between Angel and the Reverend, and it goes like this. Angel, I may not be a religious man, but I know the difference between right and wrong. Reverend, you grasshopper. This was extremely offensive to me because the Reverend was meant to show a godly example to the people in the village, and in the end sworn spoke God's name in vain. I have no understanding as to why the scriptwriters put that in. And then there was the part where the Reverend was too judgmental on Angel. When he asked where Angel's standing on God was, Angel pointed out that he was doubtful that there was a God, but was willing to accept that there was such a thing as religion. The Reverend immediately wrote Angel off as an agnostic, where there could have been a chance to show that a God is real. It is a sad fact that Hollywood likes to take shots at Christianity within movies, be it either very obvious to the viewer or not. There is something wonderful about you watching a movie you love. We can never quite recreate the feeling we had when we first saw a movie. Something particularly true for any that relies on plot twists and big reveals. But there is nonetheless a certain quality to revisiting a film again and again and finding that it continues to reward you. In this regard, I think a Roger Robert put it quite well in his review of Casablanca 1942. Seeing this film over and over again, year after year, I find it never grows over familiar. It plays like a favorite musical album. The more I know it, the more I like it. We learn the lyrics and the hooks of the songs we love so that such familiarity can guide us through it, finding ways of thinking about it and enjoying it that were not available the first time around. You simply cannot pay careful attention to all the flourishes and intricacies when you're too busy figuring out what exactly you're watching or listening to. I found myself thinking about all of this quite a bit when I sat down a few weeks ago to rewatch A Hot Fuzzy 2007. Edgar writes a brilliant action satire. By this point, I have seen the movie at least a dozen times, more than a few of those times this past winter when my friend Anna and I were prepping to make our short film locally, Source 2019A, and needed inspiration. I know all the jokes, and I'm no longer surprised by the twists, but that fact does little to stop my enjoyment. So, as opposed to writing about a newer movie, as I most often try to do, I've decided that this week I'm going to settle in and reflect on a consistent favorite that I will never get tired of putting on. A Hot Fuzza centers on Sergeant Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg of the London Metropolitan Police Force, a police officer so skilled that the Chief Inspector Bill Nye decides to send him away because he's making them all look bad. Nicholas Newpost is the picturesque and tranquil town of Sanford, somewhere in the English countryside. Nicholas is quite put out by what he sees as a stunning demotion and struggles when he is confronted with a town that is more focused on doing things for the greater good than following the letter of the law. Most of the The townsfolk are just as perturbed by this hashot cop who wants to bring his city skills to their quiet home. And so a tenuous peace emerges as Nicholas settles in. This is first tested when he arrests Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, for public intoxication, only to find out the next morning that Danny is Town Inspector Frank Butterman's, Jim's son, and also a police officer himself. Nonetheless, after their first tensions, Danny and Nicholas settle into a wonderful partner dynamic with Danny, fascinated by Nicholas' city crime fighting, and Nicholas slowly coming around to the Sanford life. Yet all is not as it seems in Sanford. And, after a string of accidents that turn out to be so accidental, Nicholas uncovers the deadly truth about Sanford. As far as plot lines go, A Hot Fuzz has one of the more inventively hybridized ones out there. Wright and Pegg have written a screenplay that merges the Hollywood action tropes of movies like I, Lethal Weapon 1987A and A Point Break, a 1991A, with the backdrop and sensibilities of the English countryside, normally on display in more buttoned-up fare, such also Far from the Madding Crowd in 1967A or A Sense and Sensibility in 1995. These are settings and storylines that you would never imagine going together, and it is that impulse that provides an avenue for such imaginative satire. Wright and Pegg use the a fish-out-of-water aspect of Nicholas's arrival in Sanford as the entry point to explore and exploit our expectations about both of the genres they are toying with. At first, this means framing Nicholas as the unapproachable and hard-edged action star who is interacting with the bumbling and sweet townsfolk. As when Nicholas is introduced to the neighborhood watch, he attends their meeting and grows increasingly aggravated as they talk about issues concerning new children born in the town and the scourge of a living statue that has cropped up in town. The humor is in the satirical juxtaposition, something that only increases as the underbelly of Sanford is exposed and the movie morphs into a full-on action film with shootouts in the streets and abounding explosions. I will remain vague on details as not to spoil the fabulous twists, but needless to say, one does not imagine machine gun toying villagers when thinking of the English countryside. The script bag and Wright put together is a masterful blend of topical humor and deep-seated satire. It hardly ever misses an opportunity to mine humor from all its various strands. It is little surprise to me that the minds behind A Shaun of the Dead at 2004 moved on to such an uproarious and more straightforward comedy. Horror and comedy both require a night of the deck subversion of expectations. While horror hopes to do this in a way that frightens us, comedy looks to take this reversal of expectation and play it for levity. One theory that explains this is the incongruity theory, something first suggested by a philosopher James Bay. He wrote that lattice seems to arise from the view of things incongruous united in the same assemblage. I believe this operates in a similar manner for horror as it does for comedy, as both the build-up to a punchline or comic release and attention before a jump scare or surprise tap into that same suspension of relief through challenging expectations. We laugh at someone falling down the stairs because it is not how they are supposed to move stairs. And we scream when someone jumps up onto the stairs to attack someone because stairs are not a place we expect to be in danger. The build-up and responses are different in each genre, but the incongruity of what we expect to see slapped together with what we do see elicits a response. And depending on how the scene is played, that can be laughter or terror. Wright and Pegg construct their script in a way that takes full advantage of this approach, using a mix of a traditional line-punchline jokes, physical comedy, and satirical commentary to move between comic registers. In one moment, we have Danny asking Nicholas, "Is it true that there is a place in a man's head where if you shoot it, it will explode?" Before moving on to them both crashing through fences to chase down an escaped swan, all before we reach a climactic battle in a supermarket deli. It is all hysterical, and in large part because Pegg and Wright are constantly looking for different ways to go in different directions than we expect. Peen and Frost are charged with bringing all of this humor to life, and they both turn in virtuoso comic performances that knowingly channel a whole host of preceding performances. Pegg seems to have pulled the growling blankness off the action hero, typified by Akinure Nathematrix in 1999, into a beautiful, unholy marriage with the straight man humor. Fabit Frost brings the Alucosta to the pairing and uses his character's obsession with action movies to bring a fanboy turned Shirork to the performance. He's a master of physical comedy and also manages to become the emotional center of the movie by embodying the struggle of someone who loves their home but slowly realizes that it has a few issues. One of my favorite scenes the two share is when they settle into Dai's apartment after taking a drunk village home to sleep it off. Danny discovers that Nicholas has never seen a Bad Boys Eye 2003A or a Point Break and decides he needs to fix that. All the while, the two start a conversation about how Nicholas can't turn off and stop working, something that Danny tells him he needs to change so he can live a happy life. It is funny because this emotional conversation is happening with the backdrop of action movies that are traditionally very uncomfortable with vulnerable masculinity, a fact that also lends the scene a tenderness that is surprising. We are inclined to expect men in action movies to blow things up and smack each other on the back, as opposed to slowing normally between the man and the expendable female romantic interest. So seeing that transposed onto a heterosexual male bond is surprising in the best ways. The scene blends humor, affection, and bloody good writing to show what's possible when you spend this much time constructing a narrative to challenge honorary expectations. Hot Fuzz was my first experience with Edgar, Wright, and it set off what is now a deep love for his work, with the odd exception, as with A Baby Driver. There is a kinetic energy to his film, making that is nonetheless quite elegant. Something that works greatly in favor of the satire here. He lingers on the bucolic landscapes while also injecting an edge to keep us on our toes. Wright does this, working with editor or Chris Dickens, by sprinkling in a number of transitional sequences that are a series of rapid cuts. One shows beer being poured into a pint, cutting to it being passed along the bar to Danny, and cutting to it being put back down empty. It moves us through the drinking without lingering on unnecessary plotting, while also sparking our attention through its rapidity. This concision and eye to effective storytelling serves him particularly well in the third act, when all of the foreshadowing and various character and plot developments pay off. For an extended series of spot and jokes, a normal action movie, or really at this point most movies abiding by the mainstream blockbuster mantra, would end with a full tilt, a final battle that focuses on ratcheting up the tension without necessarily keeping an eye of the story. Dada Hot Fuzza has this final battle, but it feels like less of an obligatory motion and more of a payoff for the friendship that Danny and Nicholas have formed, a validation of Nicholas' skepticism, and an excuse to have as much fun as possible. It works because Wright takes such care to balance the facets of his movie throughout each act. There are a whole host of people on and off screen doing incredible work. And while the movie is a testament to all of them, I applaud Wright for having the foresight to arrange such a bang-up team and oversee a brilliant production. What continues to astonish me is that A Hot Fuzza achieved that rare plane for satire. It is a movie that effectively intellectually challenges a genre, while also finding a way to be a shining example of what the genre it satirizes can be at its best. I find myself thinking of Fam Monty Python and the Holy Grail in 1975A. In this regard, both being movies that know their genre tropes so inside and out that the creative teams run endless circles around those who have come before. It is this spirit that, in my eyes, makes movies rewatchable. As a viewer, you can tell when a filmmaker, writers, cast, and crew have put in the effort to make a complex piece of work, and it feels good to watch something that was made with such regard for the craft and the experience that the audience has with it. Widely described as a spoof of zombie movies. The fantastic 2004 film Aon of the Dita was the feature debut of British writer-director team Simon Bagg and Edgar Wright. But the word spoof brings with it imprecise associations to drill like a scary movie or an airplane, where Son of the Daddy contained an actual narrative populated by characters whose fates concerned us and whose relationships we cared about, all while cleverly referencing zombie classics such as Georgia Morosodin of The Data and Sam Ramis of The Evil Dead. And just like their first collaboration, their second film together, Call It a Hot Fuzz, pays tribute to a particular genre. In this case, buddy cop films, like a bad boy. Then again, a bad boy is more accurate and a point break. As with their first effort, their second is a hilarious comedy, directorial bravado and involving action. But it's the central relationships between characters played by Simon Pegg and Nick Frost that binds us to the material. Hotshot Police. Mona Ahia of Arenic Angel Pegg works for the London police and has an arrest record 400% higher than his fellow officers, which understandably makes them look bad. His boss's cameo by Brit talent Martin Freeman, Steve Coogan, and Bill Nye, tired of Angel's overachievements, promote him to sergeant and transfer him to Sanford, a quiet pastoral town. Sanford's greatest concern resides in a golden living statue performer appearing randomly throughout the village in a pack of lawyers wearing hoodies. With no choice but to go, Angel's expert ability to fight crime is wasted on catching loose swans and pegging underage drinkers at the local pub. On his first night in town, Angel arrests his new partner, Danny Butterman, Nick Frost, for drunk driving. But since Danny's father is the local department's chief inspector, Jim Broadbent, Danny sleeps it off in a cell and wakes up the cake. Danny's dad explains the cake is urinal last week. No, last night's antics will require something a little more serious, which turns out to be a month's worth of chunky monkey ice cream. Obsessed with police action movies, Danny follows the experienced Angel like a puppy, urging him for war stories from London, to keep his eyes open, to always be on duty. That comes in handy later when Angel begins to suspect the series of freak accidents in the quiet town of Sanford are actually murders. His suspicion is further fueled by the townspeople's strange willingness to overlook the accidents, if only to preserve Sanford's status as the most pleasant town in Britain. Meanwhile, Danny introduces Angel to the aforementioned action movies, foreshadowing the over-the-top cliché, dilda copyright, cop violence to follow. In A Hot Fuzz, both caricatured and embraced to wildly fun extremes. Just toss is shown of the daddy-combined humor with authentically scary situations. The action scenes in the third act are indisputably entertaining. Normally cringe-inducing routines where a hero slow-motion jumps to one side while firing off a pistol in each hand, although in John Woo movies would be redundant and laughable in a bad way. Here, enhance the scene's deliberately inspiring intent. The film's characters, some commonplace action movie types. Some pull straight out of a quaint Marple story, outweigh their designation as stereotypes through strong performances and writing. Timothy Dalton plays a smarmy grocery store manager named Skinner, who creepily and somehow charmingly delivers a line to a woman about bashing her head in while taken as good humor by the woman. Angel raises an eyebrow. The foolish and inexperienced police force of Sanford doesn't believe Angel when he tries to convince them murder has struck their town. Even though there have been 2 decapitations and a house exploded, everything's murder with you, they claim, much to our frustration and delight. Wright's direction easily forms to action movie archetypes with his signature quick and fierce editing style, appropriately on overdrive, thanks to editor Chris Dickens. The action is not unlike the excessively segmented films of Michael Bay, except each shot and sequence is connected and planned out, leading one image into the next with masterful orchestration. This style of Wright's was explored before Rena Spaceta and is shown of the dead, but it truly blossoms into something bravado here. Nevertheless, humor remains the picture center from movie references to its cameos by thought a reference to a straw dog could ever incite an outburst of laughter. But Wright pulled it off, and keep your eyes open as Kate Blanchett appears as Angel's ex-girlfriend, and director Peter Jackson shows up as a stabby Santa Claus. Even audiences worry of pointedly British humor will enjoy the refreshing mix of subtle physical and intellectual comedy suitable for any adult audience. The R rating is deserved for blood and gore. Pegg and Frost together again, this time in buddy cop roles, complement each other as wonderfully as they did Dina Shawn of The Dead. Each character has depth and gradations, a hot fuzza apart from spoof movies and elevating it to the realm of pure filmmaking. We never feel that its winking at the audience sensibility outshines the story or action. Indeed, they'll quickly realize from the opening scenes and right to the very end that you're absorbed in the murder mystery plot and action scenes. Even though the film is satirical, it remains completely involving on par with their zombie predecessor. Wright's A Hot Fuzz deserves more than to be called a spoof, as its cinematic rhetoric speaks to audiences without relying on cheeky parody movie. Trash. This is great filmmaking and storytelling that just so happens to allude to other action movies in its construction. And quite frankly, it's greatly entertaining in both the comedic and action realms, far surpassing its referenced sources. Thanks for watching.